Last speaker for the day is Jehan Manekshaw, whom I'm sure does not need much introduction on home ground, but nevertheless, Jehan is the co-founder and managing director of Theatre Professionals. He has a BA as a theatre director at Wesleyan University, MA in Transnational Media and Global Communication at from Goldsmiths University of London, and an MFA in Theatre Direction from Birkbeck University of London. Jehan has taught as guest faculty at Ninasam Theatre Institute, Attakalari, for Movement Arts, St. Xavier's College, Mumbai, Shinshu University, Japan, and the National School of Drama's TIE division in Agartala. He has also directed numerous plays. Jehan founded Theatre Professionals in 2008, an organization that serves as an ecosystem builder for professionalization of theatre practice, and that finds ways to increase the quality of impact that theatre has in the lives of young people. Theatre Professionals has two divisions: the Drama School Mumbai, which trains and develops individuals for a professional career in theatre and its allied fields, and the Young People's Theatre Program, which enriches the learning experience of young people through engagement with drama. Jehan has also co-curated and developed workshops and residencies to advance the practice of drama applied to education. He designs, runs, and develops year-round engagement for Theatre Professionals' internal team of drama teachers, consults closely with schools to develop their in-house teacher skills through drama, and most recently ran a 3-year-long project in coordination with Flynn Theatre Berlin and Culture for Competence Berlin to bring and meaningfully adapt German methods of theatre pedagogy to 12 drama teachers from across India. Jehan has most recently received the Sangeet Natak Academy Ustad Bismillah Khan Yuva Puraskar for his organization's work in the advancement of the practice of theatre. May I please ask Jehan.
I really want to thank all of you for having me speak here. I was really truly introduced to actually what Ibrahim Alkazi did and who he was through this exhibition, and it was quite the eye-opener for me. And I think the one big thing that I got from it was the idea that there are no new ideas, just new attempts at them, and somebody somewhere has always done whatever we are trying to do before us. And these are the biggest things that I really took away from the exhibit, and I may share a few thoughts about that in a bit. Listening to Vinay, knowing Abhilash, I'm sorry I missed most of it, and listening to Neil also, I have deep envy of the fact that there is a certain element of it being able to step back and talk about the practice itself and what is actually happening in that space. And I was just lamenting to Abhilash about the fact that a lot of what I do right now is just about structures and design of frameworks, and very little about it is exactly what happens in that structure. So when I talk you through the history of kind of how the Drama School Mumbai came into being and what it does, I'm going to ask you, because you've now had a whole day of workshops of panel discussions, to imagine maybe what an actor's journey or a theatre maker's journey is in that space when they're training. For me, drama, it means doing. It means drama comes from the Greek. It's to do. And that's what we're doing. And a series of doings will lead to the understanding of what our narrative is and has been so far. So, yeah. And Neil, please do come and present Tadpole's work at the DSM. Yeah. Okay, next. Yes. So we started in 2008, a kind of misguided start. I wanted to come back and direct, and just direct plays. But I wanted to direct it in the way that I had been exposed to my 2 years of training and the plays that I directed as part of that program, with this sort of rigor and absolute trained actors, trained craft, trained all of it. And it wasn't there, and nor was it going to come. So I thought, fine, let me conduct a few workshops, or arrange for a few workshops to be conducted and see what happens and see if I can find a cast from there. And that's still an ongoing process, because the play that I'm supposed to direct from that process is still waiting to be directed. And it has been a detour of an epic proportion, and it's not a detour anymore, it's a journey. And I'm really thrilled to be on it. And have met and worked with all the different people who have just allowed this conversation of what we do to happen. So these are just some of the people who've come and trained. It was 6-day workshops, 6 hours a day. And we would do one a month. We would bring somebody from outside Mumbai mainly to come here and teach a method, a process. And it was always for people who are already walking on the boards, performing at Prithvi, NCPA. For a long time, we were limited by language. I could only communicate to the sort of western suburb audience and southern Mumbai audience. And so we started even putting our posters up in Hindi and getting translations in just to get more and more people in. And we found that we were creating a space where people would come together to train. And they trained in different things, and the instructor would ask me, what do you want me to teach? And I'd say, it's completely your journey. Just, these are the people, they've all worked, they've all done some work, they don't have formal training, they've all learned theater through doing. Just give them something that they can take back into their practice. And that's how it started. But in there, we also started getting a number of people who were using these workshops as substitutes for actor training and substitutes for training, because they couldn't either make it to the NSD, or they couldn't go abroad for the very expensive fees. And there was always this, if only we could work for longer and have more time. And so we tried to do something else, which was the intensive drama program. And of course, the way I seem to work is I seem to explode in a massive idea to start with, and then realize that I've just gone a step too far. So we had 4 sections of 48 actors coming in for 2 weeks, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And they went through a really elaborate timetable, which allowed them to have access to the work of Tomba, Ravi Varma, who did Terakuttu, Hariharan, who did Kudiyatam drumming, singing, acting. I'll leave you to imagine what their learning journey might have been in that space. My conversation really is about just the structure of it right now. And it was crazy. It was too much. And so we pared down in the next year. And it was a 3-week process, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., 2 sections only, and just 4 people coming in and focusing and trying to spend a little bit more time and depth and engagement. And by the way, the fact that this was 3 weeks, or that was 2 weeks, or whatever, was really based on the circumstances and what we felt our capabilities were as a company trying to organize such things. But at the end of this, we said, let's go towards something. Let's put on something. Let's create a showcase of learnings. And it was very problematic, because is this a training process, or is this a rehearsal process towards some kind of a presentation showing to an external audience? And the other big challenge we had was, so what are we doing collaboratively together as people coming from such different, diverse teaching strands? And this is when our learning and our journey began, in terms of how we could be this, and I thank Neil for this term, but this pluralistic sort of team or organization, and create a very pluralistic process. Next. So this happened, and this also improved. And over here, at least, there was this hunt. We started doing meetings with the faculty, like on a very regular basis every evening, to say what's being taught in your classes, how is it going, and see if there was a common vocabulary emerging. And we were trying to force fit everyone trying to speak the same language in terms of what they were trying to do with the participants. And the showcase became just processes, sharings. But it's still, and they were good in terms of the learning journey and the experience of everyone involved. But it didn't do anything for the process of finding a shared vocabulary of what we were actually trying to teach. So next. But in the 4th one, we were joined by Ben Samuels, who's from Lecoq or Lispa, one of the two, I can't remember. And one of the things that they had in that process was a theater making lab, where the students were set off to do they were given a task and they had to do that task. And that's when we really discovered it. That's when the penny really dropped. And it was this idea that when we were watching as a faculty, 5 or 6 faculty, watching and giving the students feedback on the assignment that they were given, they had 8 hours to go off, do something, come back, and we suddenly found that we were all looking for the same things. And maybe we used different words and different language, but ultimately, we were all looking for the same things and commenting on exactly the same things about what worked, what didn't work, what was watchable, what was a really lovely moment of theater, what wasn't, why something was falling apart, why it wasn't. And every one of the faculty, no matter who they were, where they were coming from, Preeti Atre, I mean, she's completely a dancer. But we all had that same eye. And that was where we sort of realized that this is where the connection is. So, and I was like, I wanted to articulate this, and I was looking through all of our stuff, and that means who are we? And I found that Padma Damodaran, who really curated a lot of these workshops that I mentioned and the IDPs, she had written this down in one of our presentations, and so I'm just going to leave it there. In our searches for workshop instructors over the years, we found that they were all in themselves the product of numerous learning experiences from a diverse range of theater traditions and styles. Their range of experiences had distilled down to an embodied knowledge within them related to performance, the fundamental building blocks of which were common to all of them, around the connection between, and you've just heard about it, the body, the breath, the imagination, to create these moments of immediacy, presence, and watchability. And that was like the super objective of what every single performing art form tries to do, no matter where in the world it is. This act of theater, this act of being watched, this is in all of them, no matter where it is in the world. So we just created the basic framework and structure, and then let the pedagogues, let the teachers come in and approach those objectives in their own way. And so for us, I mean, like, people ask us, so what is your style? What is your form of teaching? And I tell this to our students every time. There's like, if I'm confronted with 13 students, I'm saying, there are going to be 13 different pedagogies that emerge from your experience of our 1-year course. Because each and every single one of them is going to take, and that's the other thing. We all might be working in the same system, in the same style, but you would have, the person next to you, the acting student next to you, is taking things in differently, in a different way, in a different manner. So it is, ultimately, the learning journey is, and the pedagogy that transpires is the embodied pedagogy. And so that's different. It can't be the same. It can't be we're all from this system or this method. There's something else going on in there. I just said all of this stuff. Wait, go back, sorry. But ultimately, this is what we're looking for. Watchability, engagement, pursuing of an objective, being truthful in the moment, immediate, the unity of body, voice, imagination, connected to the breath. But ultimately, always serving the art of storytelling. And in our work especially, we really, because we're all coming in from different places, the people who teach, the only place we now dialogue is through the doing, through exactly what is happening on the floor. Because that's where you see the ultimate sort of result of the learning engagement. And so it all happens through the work. So now, from the IDP, we just felt like we needed to get to a 1-year course. And Padma, me, Gitanjali Kulkarni, we kind of put together some ideas, and then we asked different people who we thought would teach to come in and help with us to figure it out. And this is kind of what we have created, which is this 1-year full-time program. And I will be sharing with you the current iteration of the program, but obviously in this is the 4th batch. We're very young. We're still learning, and so this 4th batch is just, the learning from the iterations. It's a theater making course. The idea is to create the actor, creator, entrepreneur, someone who can do all three. Yes, the actor performance for us is 80% centered around the activity of acting. But it's informed, it's surrounded, there are all these other processes going around it. You have to have an awareness of it, what constructs a moment of theater, how to be an outside eye equally as being on stage. You might just end up becoming, you know, an actor, but you're going to be a thinking actor, an actor who can work and contribute collaboratively to the creative process of how am I going to achieve this objective? How am I going to pursue that tactic? Let me try something here, but it's contribution in a collaborative way. I mean, I hope that some of them end up becoming, I think of you as an auteur. The idea, you know, writing for actors and actors working for writers and everyone working for each other, so one being within the other. And I think that ultimately we just want them to be eventually producers of good work. The main thing over here that I wanted to share was that ultimately the people who are teaching this, and I'll take you to the faculty slide next, sorry. We're all working to just create people who are going to graduate and then join us and be our colleagues. It's already manifest in the fact that there have been a number of productions where very soon after the students have graduated, they've worked in groups with each other, and there's been a lot of cross-collaboration, and they're working together now. So we also equally are a community of teachers for a year, knowing full well that we're going to be a community of peers right after that. This is just this year's batch. I think there are about 14 names up here. Generally, they're all qualified in terms of they've all been through some kind of a training journey themselves. So they have the experience of some kind of formal long-term training, and that generally is a minimum criteria, though we've had people like, I didn't bother with the visiting faculty list, which is also very long. The thing that I'm really happy about with this is that this was to impress, okay? I won't lie. But the thing that I'm really happy about this is that there's a community of faculty and students now that are working together and always engage with each other, and a really nice platform or space to come and play together and unite has emerged about this. And this was not something I intended, it's just happened, and it's the one organic thing about the drama school that I really love. I haven't put the alumni slide in because we're only 3 or 4 years old, and it's a lot of time before we see what they're doing. They are doing exciting work, but I think the proof of the pudding will lie in the eating. The last time I was on this stage doing a light workshop, I passed out. Okay, so this is kind of the structure of how the faculty work. We have the co-conveners, which is Yuki, Ilyas, Tushar, Kalyani Mule, and me. Kalyani I will speak about for a second, because in terms of the learning journey that the students go over the year, the assessment of it is basically through the students' self-reflection journals, faculty feedback of the students, and they all come back to Kalyani, who then at intervals through the year checks in with them and has a conversation with them about what is the ongoing learning journey that you have. So it's a narrative journey rather than any kind of rubric or assessment or anything like that. And so that's really important because it connects to that idea of everyone being part of their own pedagogies. Then we have conditioning team, a speech and text team, and many people appear in 2 because they teach both, a body and movement team. Then we have improvisation and devising. And the way it works is that the school structure has the leaders in each team who are in bold having a constant dialogue amongst each other, and Yuki, Tushar, and I just helping all the ideas come to a more synchronized space. But it's not as hierarchical as that looks. It's quite flat. This is all rather corporate. And in the second semester, we have a design team, a play direction team. About the alumni. Sheena Khalid over here, who's directing this year's production, was in our first Foundation Skills for Actors workshop in 2008. She did a lot of the IDPs. She also helped coordinate some of our acting workshops. Then she went off and trained. She came back and founded her own company here called Patchworks. Yeah. And it's just amazing. And this is the first time we've had that moment that just today, like literally like a few weeks ago, she's agreed to do the play. And I was just like, oh. Okay, that's the most I'm going to do. I'm sorry. Wait, go back. Then there's a research project where the students research a living theater practitioner. I'll talk about that later. and a producing an entrepreneurship strand, and then a final project, which is a final theatre making project, which is completely created by the students themselves. Next. So the first semester is 22 weeks of training, unit 1, 2, 3, 4, very broadly, introduction and basics, the rhythm of the school is established, the work ethic sets in, then starting to learn, scene study begins, unit 4 is building out the basics, and then towards the end of unit 4, a first showing of works in progress to a public audience, and this is about 22 weeks of training. What does a week in the life of a drama school student look like? Next slide. So every morning at 7:45 they come in and they do Angikam. They clean the space first, sorry. And then they do Angikam. And then the first 2 hours of the school is dedicated to body and movement conditioning. So it's either fitness, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, yoga, and then singing classes or voice classes. Then, next slide. Then we have this strand, then we have this next block, which is basically fundamentals. So it's fundamentals for acting, so they work with speech and text, or they work with body and movement, but always to understand how these things can be used towards performance. And then there's a strand, then there's the next one, which is application. And application for the first 11 weeks, that's unit 1 and 2, is improvisation and devising, where they pick up the tools and they pick up an awareness of what it is to be alive, alert, present on stage, saying yes to propositions being made, listening, all of that. Devising is because and I'll talk about theatre making in a bit, is we needed to give them some fundamental building blocks with which to start their own theatre making journeys when we sent them off to go and show us a 5-minute piece. Then we have this strand next called research and praxis, which is communication skills, like literally written communication skills, which manifest itself in writing reviews, writing their own bios, and writing a good working self-reflection journal. The world of plays is seeing what else other work is out there, so stuff that anyone has done, anything that we can get on DVD is shown to them, discussed, theatre is discussed. World of plays context for theatre is the same. And then also where arts works beyond the theatre space, so we don't have this silo mentality of theatre. And these are placeholders for a longer program, I think. In a 2-year program, I would do a lot more with this. Next. And this is the key thing. For 22 weeks, every Monday they get an assignment. And then they have that much rehearsal time, which is self-rehearsal time, to fulfill that assignment. And then the faculty comes in on next Monday and watches the piece of work and then critiques it, like I described at the IDP. And sometimes, so they get to do this 22 times. So the whole time they are making work and understanding why it works and doesn't work. And it also gives them a chance to say, the big ask we do from there is, let's see how your learning is manifesting in this. And it also gives us the measure of how far we're processing, how are they evolving, how are they coming along as a group. And then the second semester is basically, I'm just almost done. The second semester is right after Christmas and New Year's. They come back, we do a 3-week workshop around light design, sound design, set design. I haven't figured out costume design yet. We do a full-length play production. And then the play actually tours, and we do 12 or 15 performances of the piece in different places and different venues, so they all have a chance to understand. Last year they went to Ninasam, Rangashankara, and Pune, and Wada also. And then they, of course, performed at the NCPA, and they perform up at the Mumbai Marathi Sahitya Sangh, where we have our space. And we've also turned it into a black box theatre with 2 lighting trusses, though we still have to rent in the equipment when we need it. This year we plan to also spend an exchange program. So during the tour, we go to Ninasam, and we want to be able to spend a week over there doing work with their students as well. So I'm talking to Akshara about that. Then they do a entrepreneurship and producing workshop, which we work on a paper assignment on what it would be like to think about what it is going to take if I want to mount a production myself. And think of my budget, my marketing, my communications. Also the idea of you going off into this world where there is no formal, you can't go off to a recruitment fair and get a job as a theatre maker, nor should you ever want to. But the idea that your own life is, and your own life as a freelancer, as a theater maker, is going to be an act of, you are your enterprise. So to pick up those principles for your own entrepreneurship. And then last year, Ramu Ramanathan takes them through a series of 76 questions that they can ask a living theatre practitioner to understand how different people have survived and made their journeys work in theatre over the last, decades. And some of the projects we've researched are, will you help me with this? Pushpa Bhave. Ramesh Kaka, who's the painter for backdrops at the Mumbai Marathi Sahitya Sangh. Shanta Gokhale, so on and so forth. The list is great. Memory, guys. Okay, and then they're given their ultimate TML task, which is basically come up with a piece of theatre, and we review it at set times in that 4-week journey. And then they present it at the end of the year as their own final piece. And we hope that it's something that they can further develop and take on with them. Theatre making laboratory, sorry, yes. And then, yes, there's many, as you saw from the different faculty, they all have. The other thing about all of our faculty is they all are working. They're all out there working and making theatre or working in the industry somewhere. So automatically the students get connected and start to work with them. Yeah, I'm going to sort of wrap there in terms of the structure and the story. I think for us, we're taking a rather agnostic approach to ideas of form, or what is our politics, or what what are we trying to say with it. We're looking at it as craft, just purely craft, technical craft. And the reason is, for me, at one level, is that there is just, I am 41, and when I see the work that some of the students have been putting up on stage as part of their theatre making assignments and all, they are looking at and relating to and reacting to the world in ways that I don't even comprehend. And I don't think we have, I don't have the qualifications to be able to guide them on that journey. So what I can do is maybe make them aware, or what we can do at the school with all of us is show them the multiple perspectives of how the act of making a piece of theatre, its relationship to society, its relationship with the world, the relationship of society to your body as a performer. We can show them that this stuff is there and these are ways to think about it. But ultimately it's their voice, and it's what they're going to be coming up with. So that's why we kind of say purposely agnostic. And the other thing that has happened, which I regret and I really want to work out somehow, in fact, we tried to do it last year and we kind of fell flat on our faces. But in all of this, because of the people or because of the body of trainers and actor practitioners available to us in Mumbai for teaching, the school has sort of gone into, the curriculum and all is ours, but I think it's very much informed by multiple people who are from more Western pedagogies. And I want to look east, and this is something that I really noticed in the story of Alkazi ji as well, and then Brecht, of course, and then this marriage, and everyone is trying, and ultimately, like, I don't think, this institution called TTRP, which is now the ITI, is one of great inspiration. I found out about it when I first met Shankar, and just his own knowledge of work was incredible, and it was worth looking up to. But I do think that somewhere in our work, we need to sort of move in that direction and be able to be informed by practices from everywhere else. I think it's a big weakness of our work right now. I think another thing that I lament is kind of the death of literature. I don't know how to say this. No one's reading plays, and everyone is in this short thing. But then again, now is that me and my own bias because I'm 40 and I like a good, well-made play? Or is there a voice to be had and everyone wants to devise? But there's so many universal truths to be found in Shakespeare and in Brecht and in, sorry, my entire canon in my head is Western, so I can't invoke the Eastern greats. But the whole point is that that's there as well. And I do feel like these things could bear reinfusion into the learning journey of the students that we have. The one-year certificate course is not what we aim to do with the drama school. It's a stepping stone again. I don't think the drama school should have a one-year certificate program. I think drama school should be 3 years conservatory training. At the very least, a 2-year program that's rock solid. And then a 3rd year optional was what I had in mind. But that's my notion of what a drama school should be, and it's already being challenged. I've been told that maybe you should look at like the idea of a 1-year school and then a 2nd year repertory model. And so all of these are ideas that are up for grabs. So yeah, thank you very much.
We have time for some questions.
You spoke a lot about intimate spaces, space and time and relation, physicality and all of that with your actors and your team. I am very curious, and in one instance you mentioned that you picked Laban work as when you spoke about choreography for one particular production that you were speaking about. So, and when she spoke about some routine that you had probably created for your own company, is Laban influenced because of the nature of the work you're doing, or was it just one of, like, your production required that kind of work, so you
No, we
to
picked
that?
it very specifically because it was part of the vocabulary of training that some of the actors in the company had, and then we explored it first in a workshop, and it had a very positive effect, particularly on kind of gestural work and defining qualities of movement, which is, to me, is a really great access that actors have into understanding their body, is to just define movement qualities. And we've used it a number of times. I mean, I know it seemed like we used it on one specific production, but we've used it on a few.
So on that, picking up from that, I don't have much knowledge about Laban work, but from what I know, doesn't it serve as a, say not negative, but does it serve the purpose when you speak about, you say Laban works really well for you, but I have seen a side that's just my own experience, where you need a lot of space to experience the velocity of Laban work also. And I'm not saying the other side, which is restricted time, space, and directions and all of that, is any less important. But does it serve the purpose of taking it ahead, or does it serve as a restrictive mode to you? Because from what I saw, your spaces where you perform and where you rehearse is quite intimate in its own sense. So,
I mean, when we kind of used Laban, we didn't think of it as essentially something that needed that space. And it's not something that came into sort of the vocabulary in which it was introduced to us. It does have, you're absolutely right, it does have, so when we used it on the Winter's Tale, we were rehearsing mostly in the park. Yep. We were rehearsing in a huge park, and it has a completely different effect, because somehow the absence of walls gives an actor a completely different physical spectrum. Whereas when we used it, A Brief History of the Pantomimes, because we were devising a vocabulary for a community of people who don't speak, and therefore what is the language that they use. I think the way that entire movement structure developed was completely different. It wasn't doing the same, it wasn't doing the same things in this production as it was doing in the other production. And that's, to me, when an idea of vocabulary or a method is versatile, is when you discover something new about it, or it inflects your process in a new way.
sorry, just the last question, and then I'll give it away.
You answer this.
Yeah, whoever. Correct me if I'm wrong, and that can be the case. I saw one of your performances, Tadpole, in Delhi, Tifli, Bends and Flows, yes. Yeah. I saw you spoke all...
that isn't Tadpole, but it's a co-collaboration. One of our actors was in it.
Yes, Bikram Ghosh.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
No, I was just worrying, you never spoke anything about, but now that you say it's collaboration, I was wondering, why didn't you speak anything about TYA performances? You did not...
I mean, there was a couple of slides at the end about our work with in education with children. I just skipped it because there wasn't time. Bends and Flows, though, we collaborated as producers, but the artistic direction of that project was someone else.
Yeah. Okay.
But we had complete faith in it, so we agreed with it on an artistic level. So yeah, but it's not a tadpole repertory production, so which is why I didn't mention it.
Thank you.
You mentioned that you started with a certain ideology, right? That ideology of an actor being an author, sort of, if I'm right. Yeah. So how do your finances affect that ideology?
Can you be more specific? I mean,
we see a lot of companies getting a lot of finances, government, non-government. So the way you improvise or the way you make a piece, how does it get affected by money, basically?
So Abhilash and I today on the cab ride here were just talking about this, and we were kind of remarking on the system in Pune, where a lot of theatre companies, including very successful companies like Asakta, for example, nobody gets paid, but they have a completely different model. But the thing in Delhi is, we decided very early on that we couldn't sustain that. And it's not that the money that actors make or anybody who works on a production makes is sustainable. So everybody working in Delhi theatre is doing a number of other things. But at some level, there's some kind of sort of evaluation of the worth of time that actors are spending. Because just to come back to something I said earlier, which the theatre system that I came into was where people would have jobs and then rehearse post 7 in the evening. That it was a very sort of amateur theatre scene, and even though they did it, the practice was very significant. They were rehearsing in the evenings. We didn't want to do that, so we were being very demanding of actors' schedules. We were asking for people to commit 6 hours a day. And we decided a few things early on. One is that because we work as a collective, everybody who worked on a production, as long as their involvement in the production was commensurate, would get paid exactly the same rate. So that so if you're a stage manager and you're a director or you're an actor, you get paid exactly the same rate.
What I meant was that how does it affect your design?
In what way?
See, we see a lot of, you
you mean funds? How does funds?
Yeah.
Yeah, completely. So there's this sort of kind of dual condition of you create work of a certain nature. So the minimal nature of our work is also because we want to be in a production where we can make a play even if we don't have funding. So there is work that we do that we know will create a certain kind of corpus, and that corpus we try and kind of recycle it, so that. So it's poverty as style, but also as kind of circumstance, and it's not that we lament it in any way. We don't slam our fists on the ground and say we are the poor theatre. It's extremely liberating, actually. The two things that are liberating in independent theatre in Delhi right now actually is the fact that that you can't afford to perform in Kamani or Shriram Center anymore. It's impossible. That's extremely liberating because actors and directors are dealing with space in an extremely dynamic way. They're looking for different things from space and, as a result, from performance itself. And the second thing is the moment I think theatre companies, at least Statpole, is not beleaguered by the problems of resources. So in terms of, to answer your design, I'm sorry I completely missed it on the first answer to your question. But I think the process of the actor and the way actors and directors design the performance takes into account this kind of, whether we like to think of it as minimalism or whether we like to think of it as lack of resources, it's part of the vocabulary then. Which is why one of the things I didn't elaborate on is actors being engineers the first play where actors were doing all the set changes by themselves, including some kind of elaborate construction, was because we just couldn't afford. Nobody was willing to come in as a production support. And then it becomes part of your vocabulary because you appreciate in it something other than the reason it was kind of the reason it that the circumstance that made it happen. And it became part of the aesthetic of Tadpole that actors must perform the kind of machinery of the play and the movement of the play in full light. I mean, that was something that we consciously decided to do because it becomes part of the aesthetic then, which is convenient, I know, but yeah.
You mentioned a couple times that you weren't friends and mostly untrained. How did you either accept or select or cast people? And I don't mean just on, I guess, audition or talent or whatever,
Yeah.
but knowing that you have a very consensus-based approach, and one person can really throw off, if there's one stubborn person, the whole thing breaks down, right?
Yeah.
So how do people come in?
So the first 2 or 3 productions that we worked on were extremely small casts. So it's essentially 4 or 5 of us who didn't know each other from before. It's literally 4 or 5 of us who had seen each other's work. We decided to work on a few productions. The first big ensemble production we did is when we instated what is our current sort of audition process, which happens on every production, is that we do a general workshop which is open, which is an extremely kind of crazy thing because it means that anybody can come in. We don't ask for, send in a CV. Nobody prepares everything. And then there's a workshop. So actually you get people who've never stepped on stage for the first time, and you get actors who have been performing in Delhi for the last 20 years in the same space, which becomes interesting and kind of sometimes volatile and sometimes very exciting. And then that filters down into a second workshop. So our auditions take ages. Sometimes they take longer than the production. And the second week of that is where actors who we've shortlisted from that open workshop go into a workshop with the actors of the company. And sometimes we get into this weird situation where we cast one of the general actors and one of the regular company members doesn't get cast. But it's just something that we...
Sorry, to beg the question, how does the shortlist happen?
We go through a workshop, the director and the assistant directors, and usually a couple of company members are part of the workshop, and then there's a long kind of discussion process. And we still we often cast before there's a text. So often there's sometimes it's just trying to find the right kind of miscellany in a cast. So even if we have 3 actors from the company who are all we think are fantastic, if they're fulfilling the same kind of body type and presence in the cast, we will pick one.
I have a question for Jehan. It's rather a pragmatic question, and that is, what about your faculty? Do you now have a faculty which is kind of steady? It's the same teachers that go through the entire semester with
Oh, absolutely not.
Oh, okay.
So this is the thing. The reality.
So do they come in for a week at a time?
No. So this is the biggest, I think the biggest learning journey over the last 4 years with the faculty has been, first of all, everyone, because their first and primary goal is to be working and making work. There's a new and lovely dialogue that has started to emerge with many of them. Whereas as in the first year, it was come for 2 weeks, come for 3 weeks. We would not take anything less than 2 weeks. And 2 weeks, if you were doing 3-hour sessions daily. Now it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday for movement, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday for speech and text. So 4 weeks minimum, 5-6 weeks. But there's a strand. The reason we had that organizational structure was that the strand leader sees that there is a good handover process, sees that the objectives of the first faculty member, nobody is coming in and teaching anything. That happened once or twice in the last year and the year before last. You teach what you know, for sure. But you have to show your peers, because it really isn't hierarchical. I know I made it sound like that. But you have to show your peers that what I set out to do in terms of how we articulated the entire 22 weeks of the first semester, I have done. Or you have to have the courage to also put up your hands and say, look, I tried to do that. I'm facing it right now in scene study. I thought I'd get them to here, and I've got them to here. And I will tell Kwaza, who's taking over from me, he's getting an email from me every week. We have about 27 WhatsApp groups going. But it's all about how do we keep working collaboratively in this way. And so that's how it's working. But there is a chunk of commitment. There is overseeing the strand. Yuki, Tushar, and Kalyani look at overall to see that there is continuity, both from the pedagogical side and how it's received by the students. That's Kalyani's job. The great thing is that everyone who's lent into the process and given a little bit more time and energy to it has all come out of it enriched as well. And you're seeing it in the work that they're creating. Teachers who are only actors have started to direct. Some of them have gone off to do some really interesting projects. They were all inspired by, or somewhere being part of the Drama School Mumbai process also helped them do that. So that's been a really great process.
Yeah, the other thing is you can start conceiving of it in a little different way, in that you conceive of it as modules of workshops with different people. For those 4 weeks, you're working. So, for example, that's what they did. Shankar will tell you about how he studied in Singapore, where they have a semester at a time. Of course, over here, you may not be able to get somebody. So they did Kathakali for 1 semester. Then they did Stanislavski for 1 semester. Then they did, No and Bunraku or whatever. And so the inputs came in like that, but they came with an intensity.
Yeah.
And with that the student was not confused with so many different ideologies which may not really match. Because then this would require the teachers to meet and the teachers to discuss it. And it's not just a handing over the baton to the next teacher. So these are some of the problems, but it's really remarkable, and I really take my hat off to you that you've even thought of going and doing this, because it's a huge enterprise to do a 1-year course. So the other thing I wanted to ask you was, how are you managing, much like the girl asked, how are you managing financially?
I want to just reflect to the first idea first, and then Neil will hit me and remind me to talk about funds. Yes, but the first one is the first iteration of the course. The first batch was very much workshop module. The thing that ITI has, apart from the capability of having someone stay for 4 weeks and 5 weeks, I mean, like. By the way, those first set of workshops, every visiting faculty basically stayed at my house. And that's how it started. Of course, we said, okay, now we're going to really be rigorous about costing it and doing it. So our limitations, we're still working within them. But we tried that. But that requires one person who can stay there the whole time. And I'm not that person. As you notice, I'm really much more that executive structuring person rather than the content pedagogy person. We don't have that person who will stay there and make sure that even in the 4-week versions, the confusion doesn't arise. When someone comes in for 3 weeks and says they're going to study, like they use mask, or they use Comedia, or they use Laban, as these are movement strands, it's not for the student to learn mask, Comedia, or Laban. They're using the form as a tool to inform neutrality, gesture, whatever it is. I mean, I'm not going to get into it. But the point is, it's the form informs those fundamental universals that we're pursuing. And that is clear in the current faculty. But I do miss, I was looking at the first year one where we had Shankar come in for 3 weeks and Prabhat come in for 4 weeks and doing things like that. And I do miss some of that because there is a value to that as well. But at no point do we... How you can't. I mean, if you want to use Kudiyatam, for example, you have to just go to Venuji's and stay there for the rest of your life, is my understanding of, what you should do. So that's there. On the funds, the Young People's Theatre Program, which is our other initiative which works in schools, makes money. And Theatre Professionals, whilst it's a private limited company, has used that money to basically bootstrap and bring this organization, the Drama School Mumbai, into existence. We charged 2 lakhs a year for the first year's batch and immediately realized that we had severely undercharged. This course costs, the actual per student seat cost is about 3.75 lakhs. per year. And then add to that Mumbai and living here for, about 2 lakhs. But we have actively, sought out funding. Some students got SRTT grants for at least some of the subsidy, but not all. So it's a hard bit. And the reason that I've not made the best presentation in the world is because I spent the last 4 nights working on a Ministry of Culture grant till 1:30 in the morning, which should have been received by whatever bhavan it's going to today. So that is where we are. We imagine a course. We think that students should pay, and they should pay about at least 2 lakhs a year for sure. We imagine a 2-year course, the cost of the course being 4 lakhs. We imagine, but then we imagine a lot of it coming from corpus, cross-subsidizing. The Young People's Theatre Program is also not supposed to be its perpetual donor. So that's the other thing that we're thinking of. And so much so that the Drama School Mumbai, as of April 1st of this coming year, will be the Drama Schools Mumbai Foundation, a Section 8 company, and we will start the whole not-for-profit thing with a separate board, etc. But one day I imagine that all the shares that the Young People's Theatre Professionals has will be donated to the Drama School Mumbai, so it can be like the Tatas, where 70% of the shareholdings are going to the trust, and the trust can continue to do good work. So I really do imagine that.
Just one thing that comes to mind is when you look at the syllabus of the NSD, it's not just the syllabus that's important, but how things are conducted. Because when Amal was at the NSD from 64, 65, I was also looking at what was happening in terms of training. What was extremely important is this whole question of interdisciplinary work. And interdisciplinary work didn't mean that there were teachers talking about interdisciplinary work only. The school hours were 8 to 4:15, and the students were given projects, and they would spend the evening researching, developing those projects. Suppose somebody was doing something on Bertolt Brecht, so they would talk about the kind of theatre, the kind of work, the text, and various. Somebody was working on Shakespeare. Somebody was working on Picasso or Cézanne. Somebody was working on Meyerhold, and somebody was working on Anna Pavlova, dancers. So each group of students were working for themselves and developing the whole concept of another field. And when the students interacted amongst each other, because they presented these projects not just to the teacher, but to each other as well. So that kind of thing where you're not working from 8 to 8 or 8 to 6, and then you go off, without having time to think about what you're doing. That process of having time to assimilate and develop it and connect it with other things that you could do is something which I just thought I would talk about.
It's completely lacking in our school. The first semester is completely no time to think. You learn what you learn in the school. The second semester is much more fluid. They become much more autonomous. They have time out to do other things. They have a lot of it self-study. At this moment, the philosophy is pack in as much as you can, and then let it all cook. The marination and the time to think about it and can be there for the rest of their lives. One of the big ethics that we're trying to teach in the school is that this is not the end of your learning journey. So we're just going to start you off on it with a deep foundation or as much information or awareness as we can give you, and then you can spend the rest of your life pursuing it. And so that's the way we want to do it right now. But if we go to a 2-year program, then that first semester that you saw would be 2 semesters, and it would only be 8 to 4. We know that also because हमें भी घर जाना है.
Jehan, you wanted to say a last something.
Yes. So one of the things, have you all seen the exhibit? So one of the things that I saw in the journey was that, especially with the creation of the National School of Drama, and there was this project of modernity, Nehruvian project, where there was a solid sense of identity, and we are going to be exploring what it means to be Indian, what it means to have an Indian theatre, and all of that. And pardon my French, but postmodernism has just screwed that up. And today, I feel like whilst I can see a lot of similarities, part of that agnostic thing is that you just don't know what. There is no single anchoring point anymore around which to build an identity. Which is also something that Neil and I had a brief correspondence about, this idea that it's got to be pluralistic, it's got to be dynamic. I have to have a retirement plan from the drama school, and so the big lament that we're having at the drama school is also the time it takes from the conveners is very heavy. And if they're trying to do other work as well. And so there is this thought of, let's have a principle, let's have a single point, at least one person. But we feel it will take away something from the current flavor or the current way we work. And I just, it's a conversation of what is the identity of the school? Is it around the one person, etc., etc.? And I don't think that exists anymore in our world right now. So.
Well, I think, just to sum up, I was just thinking as I've been listening through the day, particularly in the afternoon, I think what you've picked up on is something pretty crucial, and I think it's been said quite differently by the four of you today about actually the thinking is around exactly this, that how, a kind of a vision for the performer, for the Indian performer. Is it a vision for a performer? Is it a vision for, does the location of being Indian register within the field? And if it does, what does this actually mean? And sort of looking around, just to think, I think it's in some ways, as you started off by saying, it's interesting to be here at the occasion of the exhibition, which in some way asks a number of questions, and in many ways today has been also unfolding that the questions remain pretty much the same. Yeah. There was a sense, when one looks at the time, which is just post-independence, there's a kind of a sense of what this could mean, right? What does it mean to train the contemporary Indian actor? Because, of course, it was contemporary at that time too. The question still seems to remain, and I think, of course, this is not an unusual thing. But I think more and more, and at least one of the most important things for the archive at the foundation is to have moments like these where, in the kind of unfolding of what people have to say about the forms that they're looking through, searching for. After all, today has been about everybody's attempt to find something. And in this, kind of think about what does a young or the modern performer for today require, right? What are they supposed to be doing, and how can we provide them with, something that will help? And that's something particularly that the foundation is interested in looking into, because I guess, I don't know, at some point I was thinking, is 70 years adequate enough to, should we have found sort of distinct strands of performance making, particularly because, we do have those traditions of our own anyway. On the other hand, it feels like the idea of finding what it is to be us here is still something that in multiple ways is being thought through. So on that thought, I would like to thank all of you for coming and being here today. And I would like to ask Mrs. Alana to give the vote of thanks.
Well, thank you very, very much, all of you, for being here with us today on behalf of Art Heritage Gallery and the Alkazi Foundation for the Arts. I'd like to thank all the speakers, thank Abhilash, Vinay, and all our two young friends, Jehan and Neil, for their lovely presentations, and to Kusum, Rohini, and Joy, for being with us and sharing with us all these wonderful ideas. I would also like to thank the NGMA for giving us this space, which they are now asking us to leave because they have another program in just about half an hour. So thank you all very, very much and have a good evening.